This video is sponsored by SimpliSafe. There's no safe like SimpliSafe.
Well, hey there, idiots. Welcome back to Observe. In today's video, we're going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication of a couple people, that being Blake Lively and her co-star Parker Posey, in an interview that was recently uploaded to the internet. It's more on that in just a second. Let's go ahead and roll the intro first. Today's video is brought to you by SimpliSafe. SimpliSafe is a DIY home security system that can be self-installed or professionally installed if that's what you require, and fully self-maintained. All that you need to do is place your sensors where you want them, pair them to the wireless keypad and base station, and then, well, you're set. There's no drilling, there's no wiring, and there's not even a need for tools. Along with that, they have 24/7 live guard protection, which means that SimpliSafe's expert agents will act within 5 seconds of receiving an alarm signal. They quickly assess the situation and leap into action to take steps to ensure your household's safety. Using technologies exclusive to SimpliSafe, they can see and speak to the intruders in real time, oftentimes stopping them directly in their tracks then and there. Furthermore, with eyes on the scene through the security camera system, they can confirm the emergency level and convey critical details to 911 for a prioritized response. When thinking about a break-in, most people imagine a shady-looking character sneaking about under the cover of darkness, but surprisingly, that's not actually the case, or it rarely is. According to property crime data from the FBI, most break-ins actually happen during broad daylight. Those numbers spike even further during the summer months when more homes sit unattended for longer periods of time and the days themselves grow as well. Only a short time ago, I was awoken by an unknown man rummaging around my front door where the delivery services usually leave my packages or mail. This was not the first time that this had happened. There had been other alerts from people around the neighborhood of these various people stealing packages and vandalizing homes. Since I work from home, that kind of got me thinking a little bit more about my home security, and that is where SimpliSafe came in and answered my concerns. With their award-winning home security, they were named among the best home security systems of 2024 by US News and World Report. For the 5th year running now, actually. It was even ranked the best customer service of 2024 in home security by Newsweek, which also let me know that I would be well taken care of. They never lock their customers into long-term contracts, so I knew that I could cancel my subscription at any time. Along with that, their transparent and affordable pricing, starting at less than $1 a day and with no hidden fees ever, was quite the draw for me personally. On top of that, their user interface is very simple and intuitive, making arming and disarming the system, accessing camera feeds, locking and unlocking doors, etc. a very easy and approachable process. So, if you would also appreciate having the security and peace of mind that I do through SimpliSafe's various features, try following the link in the description of this video. By following my link, you will save 20% off your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for a Fast Protect monitoring plan, and you get your first month for free. So, visit simplisafe.com/observe to customize yours personally. Remember, there is no safe like SimpliSafe, and now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Okay, for those of you that don't know, Blake Lively recently starred in a film that was released at a similar time to her husband's film Deadpool and Wolverine, and there has been honestly just a lot going on in the media about it. If you would like to be able to see more on that, I suggest doing a quick search, and you'll see everything that goes into why this is so messy. But people have been requesting me specifically to react to this specific, very short interview. I will give you a heads up, it's extremely uncomfortable to watch, and there are some interesting nonverbal tells throughout it that seem to be fairly revealing about some of the mentality behind the people within the interview. I think that's enough of the little discourse, disclaimers, all of that stuff. Let's go ahead and dive right in.
First of all, congrats on your little bump.
Congrats on your little bump.
What about my bump?
You've got 2 nice ones.
And these, they are kind of bumps, aren't they?
No, not bumps.
Okay. Each time I watch it, I just immediately start to feel uncomfortable. So the interview, at least from what we're seeing footage-wise, it starts off with a fairly polite congratulations on having a pregnancy, a baby. That's an exciting time in people's lives, and people love to get congratulations on that. So that's how it starts off, and Blake immediately takes that compliment and twists it around to an extent there, which lets us know that she's going into this interview on a level defensively. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a need to take and twist and retort the way that she ended up doing so. This is not one of the situations where like a pregnancy was being kept a secret and it was revealed during this interview. This was just your regular pregnancy. Congratulations on your little bump, as a way of saying, good job on being pregnant, yay. And so Blake's taking of that, of the physiological attributes of being pregnant, taking it and immediately turning it and putting it back onto the interviewer, goes from congratulations on being pregnant to, well,
congratulations on you being overweight,
is the tone that she immediately sets for this interview, which I find that defensive, aggressive tone to be a fascinating way to try to promote any piece of anything, because anybody then watching that is turned away from the source material that's being promoted. What we saw nonverbal from the interviewer at that point is you start to see a little bit of fidgeting come in around her fingers. That anxious energy comes up because of this negative stimulus that Blake has introduced into the situation here. Now, her co-star immediately then takes it and sexualizes it further than the weird twist that Blake immediately put onto the pregnancy congratulations, and makes it about her butt. And then Blake takes that sexualization of that initial innocent compliment and even further does so by making it about her co-star's breasts. And now we're so far off base of what the initial little blip was talking about that the interviewer has to be just sitting there being like, well, okay. All right, this is going really well. For those of you that don't know, the title of this is from the creator, the interview that she did, that I did with Blake Lively, that made me want to quit my job. That's not an interview title that you, as the person being interviewed, wants to ever hold. So already we're starting off fairly uncomfortable. It doesn't slow down. Let's continue.
Not bumps. The lovely lady lumps. Check it out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are
You like the movie? Are you a Woody Allen fan?
I love most.
Okay, and then Posey is now trying to redirect the interview back on course. But what I find fascinating with Posey's redirection of it is the slight little flash of disgust that comes into her face when talking to the interviewer, and then immediately you hear kind of the reasoning behind that. You like the movie, are you a Woody Allen fan? And so the two of them, both Lively and Posey here, have gone into this interview extremely defensive and aggressive at the same time, which doesn't work for promotional content. That's not the energy that you want any of the talent to be having when promoting a movie, because anybody watching it, the viewers, the interviewer, anybody watching it is immediately going to be like, I don't have any interest in supporting any of whatever that was. Already, we're starting to see some overt indicators of aggressive, defensive behavior from the people being interviewed towards an interviewer who just asked a very innocent question. Let's continue on through.
Love most of his movies, and this one was so like visually amazing.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Did you guys love wearing those kind of clothes that you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, working in digital.
I'm gonna go ahead and pause here. Another innocent question, especially if the clothes design, which the clothing design and choices in the movie was to a level, a subject of conversation to the viewers, which you have to give credit then to the costume designers of that movie. If people outside of the movie are talking about your costumes in there, that can be seen as a good job. If people are ragging on it because it looks terrible, that's different. That's not the direction that the media buzz has been taken about the clothing. It's just a general overall interest. So an overall decent question for people partaking in a movie that has interesting costume design. And Posey's initial response to it was a pretty positive response. Yeah, it was nice to be able to do that. And now we're going to hear Blake take this, again, normal question and twist it around and try to make it a sexist thing rather than intrigue and curiosity and appreciation for the costume design thing that it was. Let's watch.
Everyone wants to talk about the clothes, but I wonder if they would ask the men about the clothes.
I would.
I love Jesse's suits and how
that's what I'm saying. His word.
All right. So Blake has made a very overt habit of not looking at the interviewer during the entirety of this little blip that we've seen so far. We're also starting to see agitation coming out from Blake's nonverbal communication by the bouncing of her foot. Then verbally speaking, we're hearing her take like I said, a fairly innocent question about costume design and making it into a problem that it wasn't supposed to be in this interview. Now, there's some backstory to that, especially in Hollywood interviews like that. A lot of women will get very inappropriate questions in regards to wardrobe, if especially in relation to undergarments wardrobe, body sizes, things like that. So there is some cultural reason for the possible defensiveness. However, this interviewer obviously was not approaching from that avenue. So with then Blake taking that and twisting it immediately around into this different avenue, it again leaves the viewer and the interviewer with a bad taste in their mouth because it's a manipulation point that Blake is doing here. She's taking words from another person, twisting them to create her own narrative, I don't know if it was a need for some form of controversial buzz, what have you. She has taken original words and twisted them into something that they weren't. And now we're going to watch this whole little blip here and try to pay attention to, throughout all of this, how much respect, appreciation, or acknowledgement of the interviewer the two interviewees have. Remember, your entire goal of these interviews is to promote your movie, promote your media, get people to want to watch it, get people to relate to the cast, what have you. That's the goal of this. Let's see how that goes.
His wardrobe was beautiful.
I know,
Corey's wardrobe was gorgeous.
He's
Those
so
high-waisted pants.
He's so great.
I would wish men
and
wore
sorry,
high-waisted
too.
pants like
I know.
that still. Or their father with his tank top and bed.
It's so good.
It's just like
Did you
that.
catch
You could feel
the
it.
tablecloth on the light in the Italian restaurant when they eat spaghetti?
I didn't
and
notice that. No.
There's
So
so
I
much
feel like-
warmth of everything, you know.
Yeah, it's not just the women that have the clothes.
But
I feel like the women
Victoria-
get the conversation, but it's like
yeah.
Okay, so again, we have watched almost like an entire minute there. The interviewer has been able to ask one question, and the two interviewees sit there and have a conversation, completely excluding and disrespecting the interviewer who asked the initial question. Posey makes an occasional attempt to involve the interviewer into their weird little conversation that they're having on camera here by just a glance and maybe a gesture. Blake refuses to look over at the interviewer throughout the entirety of it until the very end, where she's still trying to hammer home this point of like, oh, all the costume design was great, but why are only the women? Well, frankly, Blake, there are only two people being interviewed right now on screen, and both of them are women. So realistically speaking, the only people that can be asked about the costumes in this interview are going to be the two women that are present. It's not about men versus women in this, it's just about the costumes, so why don't we talk about the costume design instead of doing whatever weird thing it is. So we're seeing this interesting disconnect from the two interviewees being very cliquish with each other. They're facing each other, they're interacting with each other, and then they're doing a nonverbal wall showing very clearly that they don't want to be a part of this interview and they don't want the interviewer there. Which again, I can't wrap my head around the PR reasoning behind this. Why would you want any of your talent to do something like that for a movie that they're in? It just makes people be turned off towards it. Let's continue watching.
Like every detail with everybody.
But yeah,
it's so,
it was
so
amazing
beautiful.
to look at.
Steve's
And then to see
white
it,
suits.
yes.
And then you notice in LA, like everybody's in cream colors and all the men are wearing like white and cream. And then you get to New York and it's a little bit more browns and moodier. And Susie really told such a story.
Yeah, amazing.
Alongside Vittorio, because it is a lot brighter and sunnier in LA, and New York has just a steaminess to it.
Okay, so the interviewer has consistently kept very small manipulators on her fingers here, and those are signs of agitation, but she keeps them very, very controlled, which is just an indicator of a good interviewer who is used to being on camera. It would be even more uncomfortable if you could very overtly see the discomfort from the interviewer. The things that you see from her are the stiltedness of her nonverbal communication. She's fairly stiff, and like I said, she has those manipulators in there, and then she also even tries to interject into this weird little conversation that has started on screen without her, and the interviewees talk over the interviewer. The amount of disrespect in this interview is astronomical, and it makes me wonder, did something happen outside of the interview that we, the viewer, aren't aware of? Was something said that caused this animosity to suddenly come to fruition on screen so visibly and clearly? It's difficult to say. But then what I want to also make note of verbally is that the interviewer asks a question about costume design. Great, brilliant. Blake gets defensive, twists the words around to say that it's something else, and then continues to talk about how good the costume design was, meaning that Blake understood the original question was about the costume design, how good it was, but instead of just answering the question like a human being could, she wants to twist it and make it into something that it's not, while understanding what the original driving purpose was for it. It really puts a bad taste in a casual viewer's mouth, and obviously really put a bad taste into the interviewer's mouth, as this was the interview that made her want to quit her job. It's understandable. Let's continue.
And I think, the whole Hollywood glam, it's so glamorous and everything. Can you relate to the things they were saying about Hollywood? It's so easy to get seduced by the fame and the money and the glamour.
You see it all the time. That was one of my favorite things about the movie, were the subtle turns to their own transition into, like, the ego of showbiz that Kristen has in that scene with Steve Carell. And then with Bobby taking on the persona of a club owner, but still, like, these are things you do when you're an adult.
Yeah.
When you have to work, you have to, you play a part. You play at your life in a way that you find successful, or so it's a lot about choices. And then they carry this love, and it's just very. It's very grown up.
It's neat to see where they came from, though, and see how authentic.
So we're getting this rambly answer to the question that was posed here, which doesn't really answer the question. Again, it seems as though the interviewer is just here to provide stimulating chit-chat points between the two interviewees, which is not what the purpose of the interview was, but that sure is what it's turned into. And so we're seeing Posey here continually trying to interact with both Blake and also then interact with the interviewer. There's a switch in between, you'll see her check in, but even with that attempt, the majority of the social interaction that we're seeing and observing here is not with the interviewer to interviewee, as an interview should be. It's the interviewer watching the two interviewees talk. It's almost like watching two students in a classroom in the front row talking the entire time while the teacher is trying to carry out a lesson. It gives the exact same sort of energy, but here on this televised promotional media for a film. Very different situations, same energy. Something else that I want to be able to note is that Posey has a fair bit more animation in her nonverbal communication. She moves around a fair bit. She has a lot more self-soothers. I'm wondering if she felt a level of anxious before this, and perhaps that's why Blake is paying so much sole attention to Posey instead of to the interviewer as she should. Perhaps she's trying to be supportive there, and that's why she's exclusively looking at Posey. It feels to me like that's a little bit of a leap, but there's still more to this. Let's keep watching.
How authentic these people truly are, and what good people they truly are too.
Yeah.
Because it's what you would see from the outside of the cafe society. You could dismiss each of their characters,
Right.
but to see what a heart and soul each of them have is nice, and it's something that, that's the thing, as far as like relating to it personally, that you see, you have these ideas of people that you're fans of, and then you meet them and get to know them as a person, and oftentimes you're such a greater fan of them as a person than you are as the person that people feel like they know, and that's
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pause here. So this is interesting. Now Blake is taking a different turn. There's some nonverbal communication that I find fascinating along with this subject change. First, Posey is repeatedly, almost obsessively fidgeting with it looks to be perhaps like a faux wool mat or something that is on Blake's chair. I watched multiple times to see, is this a dog perhaps that they're petting? But there's no movement in the little fur ball that's down there to indicate any level of breathing or that the dog has any form of life if it is a dog. And that's the only other thing that I can consider it being. If it were a dog and it was alive, then the repeated petting and massaging of that little fur piece makes a little bit more sense. But in that I could not see any indicators of life in the little fur pile, it strikes me as an interesting self-soothing style of gesture where that repeated small motion of fiddling with something soft like that can be an indicator of agitation being calmed down. Then while Blake is talking about how people can meet people in real life, she starts getting more agitation as well. She finally looks at the interviewer, which is glorious. What a crazy concept to do. And then she starts fidgeting with her foot, and she does some postural changes as she's trying to talk about how a lot of the times when you meet people, they end up being so much better in real life, which a lot of the times that's not the case. The saying is very common, do not meet your heroes because you're bound to be disappointed. That is a saying for a reason. For her to then be saying, oh, people are oftentimes so much better while showing these agitation points, it makes me curious if she's in some level being defensive of perhaps herself or even somebody in the cast, just somebody in relation to Blake. Otherwise, we wouldn't have that statement that goes against the actual statement that's very common, and we wouldn't see the very overt self-soothers that come out in regards to it. It's a fascinating little spike there, but we've only got a little tiny bit left of this very short interview, so let's continue just watching the dumpster fire.
And that's always that's always nice and refreshing when you see that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, what do you feel like is the biggest misconceptions about fame and Hollywood in general?
I think the idea that people think that they know you, I think because of how intrusive media is these days, people care so much more about your personal life than they do your work, and if you aren't open with your personal life, then they just make it up for you and share it for you. So I think the biggest misconception I see often is people feeling like they know someone that they don't, because they know what the media has created of someone. And the disappointing thing is when you meet the people, they're always so much more awesome than they're portrayed to be. I mean, that's normally my experience. And even
All right, so another fascinating point here. What's the most difficult part about Hollywood? And I think that there's a number of answers to this. What's the most difficult thing about fame in Hollywood? This isn't unheard of the talent being misconstrued for their characters or people feeling like they really know the talent when they really don't and things like that. It feels like this statement is on the same level of defensiveness that Blake has shown throughout the entirety of this. And the reason that I'm also feeling that it's defensiveness rather than a clean, honest statement is, again, because of the overt amount of self-soothing gestures that seem to crop up while Blake is responding to this. Again, she seems to be fairly inanimate when having the conversation aside from the interviewer, seems to be fairly relaxed and inanimate. When it starts to be these points of almost questioning of character, then she starts to have more animation in her self-soothing. So I find that fascinating as we're starting to see that crop out more regularly. Posey is still doing repeated self-soothing gestures onto this little, again, rug? I don't know what's going on there. I hope it's a dog. I hope maybe it's just a dog that's asleep, really, really asleep, and even if Blake moves, and no matter what with touching or anything like that, it's just a really good set dog, really relaxed, hanging out there, because it makes sense. It gives context and reason other than self-soothing. Agitation needs to be calmed down from Posey. We're hearing that this entire interview is not centered around the promotion of the film. It's centered around defensiveness and perhaps even general aggression. I don't know if the two co-stars are aggressive towards this specific interviewer. That doesn't make as much sense. So perhaps this is all just an indicator of the defensiveness that is existent within the cast of this movie. We're almost done here. Let's keep watching.
even people that are portrayed to be really great people, they're just a lot more complicated and interesting and nuanced and caring and thoughtful, and that's always nice, you know, to see that your idea of someone isn't always who they actually are.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Okay, I do get why people wanted me to watch this interview. It's so hard to watch. Non-verbally speaking, at the very end of this as well, if you look at the expressions of both of the interviewees, the dismissive nonverbal communication is very clear, and then on Posey's side, we have a very overt disgust, dismissive nonverbal cluster with an eye roll and the action in the corner of the nose. This entire interview was not going to go well because of the interviewees. Their job, again, was to promote a film, and instead of going on and promoting a film, what they ended up doing was going on, causing a bunch of unneeded conflict from incorrect interpretation of questions, and then the characterizing emotion throughout all of it was this disgusted, dismissive, lack of desire, inattentiveness, and disrespect towards the interviewer. Just an awful, awful interview all the way around, and I understand why the interviewer was tempted to quit their job after this. This would be so uncomfortable to sit through for anybody involved, but especially the interviewer who's just there wanting to get simple answers to this question to help promote a film. Okay, so that's my analysis of this. It seems as though both Lively and Posey were extremely aggressive and defensive. I'm not sure what their agitation's stemming from, but it was based off of, if my understanding is correct, a level of insecurity within both of themselves. But let me know what your opinion is in the comments of this video. Thanks again to SimpliSafe for sponsoring this video. Go check out SimpliSafe, use the codes, get all the discounts, it's good stuff for you. But without further ado, that's all that I've got for the day. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome as you always are, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.